first purchased that property. And we had to build a shed out the back to house certain things. And so Yogi Bhajan told his driver, who was also his gopher and his you do this, you do that guy, called Singh, said, build me a shed. Now, I didn't just build the shed in a moment. You know, it wasn't just, as Yogi Bhajan would say, it wasn't just gilly gilly. That's a word. I've always actually thought that it's probably a magical mantra from way back in history, because anytime he was talking about logic, he'd say gilly gilly. So I'm holding on to that. I would invite you to do it too. Maybe one of us will have a breakthrough in it. We can teach each other what that actually means. Okay, the mudra was, right, in the mantra, gilly gilly. So anyway, I had not just built it gilly gilly, like in an instant. And so like, I don't know, like 35 minutes later, he comes out, and the shed's not built yet, you know? I've got the lumber, I've got the plywood, I've got the 2x4s. I'm planning in my head. He says, what's going on? I said, I'm planning. He says, no planning. He says, let's just build it. So he starts saying, okay, pound that there, put that there. And I'm like, whoa. And this is cool because it's actually building itself, right? And then we had to cut it 4x8 sheet of plywood. And I had a table saw back. Well, if you've ever used a table saw, there's one thing you don't absolutely know. Do not bind the wood in the table saw. Very dangerous. Because that saw blade is running at 1,800 revolutions per minute. And that's fast. And that's going to kick that 4x8 sheet of plywood like it's a leaf. But when it lands, it's not like a leaf. It's like a 4x8 sheet of plywood, right? So anyway, I said, okay, sir, you can hold those two sides. Because I was pushing it through, and he was holding. I said, okay, you can hold those two sides, but don't push them. Actually, no. I was guiding it through, and he was pushing. And because I wanted to keep the two pieces like kind of separated so they didn't collapse on the saw blade. So I said, okay, now, just don't push. Because the saw blade is moving towards him, right? He looks at me like I've just spoken some language he didn't understand. He's just looking at it. He's looking at it. And then all of a sudden he pushes. And it kicked that 4x8 sheet of plywood right into his gut. And all I heard was, "Waheguru." And he fell flat on his back with a 4x8 sheet of plywood on top of him. I'm standing there going, holy, I just killed our teacher. So I walk around and I lift up the 4x8 sheet of plywood and he's smiling at me. He says, I see what you meant. So the first words out of his mouth were, Waheguru, right? And immediately he's in a state of, I just discovered something. Whereas a normal, let me survive this ordeal called life on earth person would have been furious. Why did you do that to me? Right? That's you and me. That wasn't him. Because he was doing this with his third eye open. And by the way, two things you don't want to do with your third eye open. Run a table saw. Or drive a car. Just get dumb and stupid when you're doing those things. And follow the rules. And don't get creative when you're driving a car. Ask my wife when she drives with me. Because, you know, it's like, honey, I'll drive. Even our kids would say, we're not going unless mom drives. You know, Krishna car, she used to say I had gotten my license on a farm where there was nothing but fields to drive through. You know, Krishna car that comes and teaches here. So anyway,